Story podcast appears, where we discuss mysteries, histories, and occasionally conspiracies. I'm your host, Belle.
And I'm your co-host, Dolly.
Today, we are reviewing the case of the Halloween murders of Elizabeth Platzman and Ronald Sisman.
Today's content warnings are as follows. Murder, guns, blunt force trauma, mentions of sexual assault, and drug mentions.
If you like this episode, be sure to rate and review it so that others can find us and enjoy it too. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. It was October 31st, 1981, and Ron Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman were found murdered in Ron's apartment in the Chelsea section of Manhattan.
Never heard of that.
Ron Sisman, who was 39, was born on February 19th in 1942 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and his alleged girlfriend, Elizabeth Platzman, 20, on August 4th, 1961, was born in Manhasset, Long Island. Now, I say allegedly because I couldn't find many sources that said that they were dating, but it was in a forensic anthropology paper with citations that were both interesting. One is a site that was literally called medium.com, and I actually think the premise of the site is that, like, they take... I'm not 100% sure what the situation was, but it was kind of weird. And then the other didn't even have the case on its website anymore. And then I found another site that stated that that it was called the Cinemaholic. So I'm not even sure. And then I added an author's note in here because during my research, I found another newspaper article that was published on November 2nd in 1981. And that article, which I'm going to be referencing a lot, was written by Thomas Raftery and Richard Edmonds, and the article does refer to them as a couple.
Okay.
So,
I also...
39 and 20, we're going to just move right along.
Right past that. Both consenting adults, and it's not... I was going to say it's not that bad, but 20 is very young.
Yeah.
20 is like, my little sister is 21.
Yeah.
Is she?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
Because I'm 25.
Yeah.
I'm insane.
Woo! Now, based on the New York Times article, separate from the one that I just referenced, their bodies were found at 7:40 p.m. Saturday in his third floor duplex apartment at and this is a direct quote, 207 West 22nd Street. A police spokesman said their identification had been removed.
So their IDs,
mm-hmm.
or
their IDs, any form of identification was removed.
Okay, but this isn't saying like they cut off their fingers and faces and stuff.
No,
okay.
it wasn't a gang hit.
Okay.
According to the police spokesman, the apartment's furnishings had been torn apart as if the killer or the killers were looking for something. Again, from the New York Times article, the police believe that Ron may have known the killer as there was no sign of forced entry. Although I don't think we can exclude the possibility that maybe Elizabeth knew the killer instead.
Yeah.
Because I think it's granted, yes, it was his apartment, but if they had supposedly been dating for a while, who's to say that it wasn't someone that she knew?
Or if they were friends and...
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
We don't know.
I'm sure you, like, text people when you come over here all the time. Because, like, what if the house burned down and they were like, where's Belle?
Yeah. Although it's funny, though, because I think the only person who actually knows your address, because, okay, you assume I have that many friends. My mom knows your address.
You have many family, is what I will say.
Yeah, I got a lot of family. Big fucking family. Referring back to the first article that I mentioned by Thomas and Richard, they were told by police.
And Richard? Is that a newspaper or?
No, sorry, those are the people who wrote it.
Okay.
The article was published in the Daily News in New York.
Which,
yeah.
Is it the Daily News that I'm sketched out about?
I don't know.
It's Daily something. Daily Sun, maybe?
Maybe.
There's a England-based...
Oh,
Great Britain-based
this one's in New
Daily
York.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. They were told by police that Elizabeth and Ron were actually killed early Saturday morning, but they were not found until later that evening. Both victims were shot at close range in the head. The article also states that the gunman entered the apartment on the third and fourth floors of his apartment, so I don't know if it was a multi-level, like, apartment that he had. It was in a 4-level apartment building in New York. Okay. So, kind of...
Do you know who,
Yes, I get into that next.
Sweet. Great minds, then.
Yep. Now, okay, so the superintendent of the building, Gerald Warfield, said that due to the blood splatter, he thought that they had been bludgeoned to death. Gerald is the one who found them, being the superintendent of the building. Now,
Why?
something that I find interesting
Okay.
is that the article doesn't mention what caused him to check on the apartment. I found that very weird. So
sketchy, maybe.
Some things, there's so little corroborated official
Okay.
like published evidence in this, or published information, because there was like,
is this case closed?
No,
Okay.
there's nothing. I kid you not, there's a New York Times article that I found and the Daily News article that I found. Everything else is uncorroborated speculation.
See, this is the kind of thing where I almost wish
I could,
when we get bigger,
I would like to
feel
contact,
okay reaching out to the family. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, not to the family. I'd reach out to the police department.
Okay, yeah. Because, I mean,
I almost did.
Some of these, like, I almost did that with the Heim one. Because some of these cases, the families, a lot of cases like this one, actually, the families are really pissed about it happening for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And they want it to be solved. And, like, if people reach out to them, they are 100% like, I will give you anything you need. I will tell you whatever you need. I will, like, boost your post. I will come on as a guest. I will do whatever.
Just please get this out there. But I searched for both of them individually. I fucking could not find, like,
well, and usually
not a lot.
And if families get to that point, usually there's like a Facebook group or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's obvious, it's easy to find them.
Yeah. Well, and I like did
did you try Find a Grave?
Yeah.
I love Find a Grave.
So, and I found that for her, but I did not find it for him.
That's really weird. I think you can suggest, like, ask for one.
But yeah, either way, there was not allowed out. There's only 8 pages.
8 pages?
On
like
Google.
Total?
Yes, on Google. 412,000 search results. 8 pages.
That's ridiculous.
Right? And you know at least 4 of those pages is just ads.
For listeners, I type out, like, bullet pointed notes for my script, and Belle types out, like, full sentences, basically, like, paragraphs.
Yeah.
You don't stick to them 100%, but they are full sentences. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I infer a lot.
So my next case that we're talking about with those bullet pointed notes is just the script is 8 or 9 pages long, depending on how you look at it.
This one, not including all my extra and my sources and shit, is technically only 2.5 pages.
Yeah.
I was expecting this one to be so long, and it's not.
Wow.
It's crazy. Now, okay. So, let me kind of go back. So, now, some other interesting things that I would like to note is that Ron did have a permit for a gun and had registered a .25 caliber pistol, but no gun was found in the apartment. In the articles, I have no idea. When I say there's no information,
fuck,
it's like, it's insane. Like, I looked everywhere. Like, I did newspaper. Like, this had more effort than my next case, because there was so much info on my next case. I was like, okay, this is fine, right? I had, well, you can look at my sources. This was literally all of the articles that I could find. This was all of them.
That's wild.
That's all I could find.
Okay.
And most of them linked back to each other.
Okay,
so it's kind of like,
yeah, it's a little bit like the Joan Risch case that I'm going to talk about in the next.
Yes, very much so.
But the Joan Risch case has a massive amount more information.
Yeah.
Which comes with more misinformation.
Yes.
But even with misinformation, it can sometimes tell you something.
Yeah.
Because it tells you what didn't happen, you know?
Yes, exactly. So, and now with this one is that there are, oh, this is funny. See, this is kind of how, Ollie was discussing. So I have mine kind of written more like a direct, like, read from script, but I don't actually do that. My next part literally says, now for this case, I'm surprised by how little information there is. A lot of supposition and no and not a lot of corroboration. Now, with that being said, though, there were some articles that said that they were killed by the .25 caliber pistol. But I couldn't find that anywhere in the police article. And which kind of makes sense. Because, again, people wanting to say, oh, use it as an identifying material for a confession.
Well, and I also think that this happened a lot in the Joan Risch stuff, where things would be mentioned, and then in other sources, they would connect the two things. For instance, no, I don't want to use a Joan Risch thing example, because we'll talk about that in that episode.
Yeah.
But if one article had mentioned, or if the police, for instance, had mentioned a .25 caliber pistol, and also that they were shot, people could assume could assume those two are connected when they aren't necessarily.
No, and it's like, unless it's specifically stated by the police, but again, there was no statement by the New York Police Department that I could find
anything at all.
That I could find.
Well, usually they're on like YouTube and stuff, and even if you have to go digging, even if they have like 5 views, you can usually find it.
Yeah.
Like the Chaim Weiss.
Which, again, almost everything I saw was like other podcasters, and I didn't want to just listen to that, because the issue that I found with that is, one, I don't want to take anybody else's work, even incidentally. But the other thing is, because there's so little actual information sources, written information sources, I did not feel comfortable corroborating that. And part of the reason is because of what I get into next.
Okay.
So, because this episode is so short, I'm actually gonna go ahead and have us go into a brief little ad break. So you may or may not experience an ad right now. So now some more interesting things that I feel lead more into the skepticism and uncorroborated parts.
Skepticism?
Yes. So Ron Sisman was suspected by his neighbors to be dealing cocaine regularly and out of his apartment. This is actually in the Daily News article.
I love that just comes halfway through the goddamn case. Like,
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, so it was in the article, but it was more, to me, it was an eyewitness. It wasn't. It literally said, like, his neighbors believed that he was dealing.
Yeah, they probably interviewed his neighbors and...
Yeah. But, again, it's not like the police were saying, oh, he was investigating and they found drugs in his apartment.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of that with the Joan Risch one as well, where information comes from the neighbors, but not from the police.
Exactly. I'm like, where the fuck is
especially in things like the Joan Risch case, where the police were they were very active in getting her case out there.
Yeah. Which I couldn't... I'm like...
Yeah.
What happened with this one? So... And then, part of this is that several neighbors noted that he was friends with a film producer named Roy Radin, who was 37 at the time. Now, they both had a connection to the young actress Melanie Haller, who was 24 at the time. In April of 1980, Melanie had accused Roy, the producer, had held her at gunpoint and raped her. Now, he was never officially charged with rape, but a month later, when Haller was at the hospital, she told them that Ron Sisman had forced her to take narcotics, separate from the rape, the assault. Now, the charges against Ron were dropped eventually because Melanie apparently wouldn't cooperate with the police, and the police discerned that these two cases, the murder of Ron and Elizabeth, and the incident with Melanie, were not connected. Okay. Now, with that being said, though, just because the drug claim wasn't
corroborated doesn't
mean it wasn't true. Because I think it's a strong theory, which is funny because it's New York.
That's true, yeah.
But still, but so kind of one thing that I was thinking is, if he was dealing drugs, it could have been someone coming to pick something up. They could have gotten into an altercation, and then...
I mean, things like cocaine are known to cause things like paranoia.
Yep.
Violence.
And then on top of that is, while the superintendent of the building, was like, oh, he thought that they had been beaten to death. People are often surprised how much blood splatter there is when someone is shot. I mean, so I can...
Especially if they had been sitting there all day.
At least for 12 hours.
Because, I mean, I know that isn't just blood splatter, but it would appear as if there's a lot more blood, if they've been sitting there bleeding for...
Yeah. For how, for at least 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, again, discern a time. But, now...
Because it's more spread out.
Yeah.
The blood. Yeah.
So this next information comes from that website, the Cinemaholic. Now, apparently, a prison informant called and told the police that David Berkowitz, also known as Son of Sam, had told him about the murder before it happened.
This is a wild case.
I know!
You're telling me it involves an actress and David Berkowitz, and there are like 2 articles on it? What the fuck?
Right? Dude, okay, well, what's weird though is, so basically what I get into next is the fact that the Mallory Terry, who was the American journalist who was like investigating theories on Son of Sam, he was the one who kind of like, so there's a Netflix show series, whatever, that this is basically referring to, and in that show they bring up Ron Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman, and that's about it. Because, well, and so again, let me go into more of the reasons why. So, the confidential informant in prison mentioned that this was going to be carried out by, David had allegedly mentioned that this was going to be carried out by the satanic cult that he subscribed and participated in. Now, it was alleged that the murder of Son of Sam's last victim, David Berkowitz, it was alleged that the murder of David Berkowitz's last victim, Stacy Moskowitz, was supposedly captured on film, and that Ron Sisman was the one who was recording from a distance.
Does this suggest that Ron was, like,
killed
participating?
No.
Or... Okay.
Wrong place, wrong time, was recording it when it
just
happened.
Happened to be recording or saw something and decided to start recording. Okay.
Basically. Now,
why? Okay.
I know. I have a lot of questions too.
How long before they were killed did
Stacy die? Well,
because if it was like the same night, like, but if it was like months before, then why the fuck wouldn't he have gone to the police with that footage if he wasn't?
That's what I wonder.
Yeah. If he wasn't complicit, that's the word I've been looking for these past 5 minutes.
July 31st, 1977.
And this happened. Oh, God.
Was the last person shot and killed by. This is October 31st, 1981.
Yeah, no. That's years.
Now, hold on, because if you're in a cult, people be weird about it. Anyway, so, now on the show that Mallory Terry worked on, which is called The Sons of Sam, A Descent into Darkness. Apparently it's a Netflix series. I didn't watch it. Yeah. It stated that there was another informant who contacted Mallory claiming that he was a part of this cult. He mentioned that Ron and his girlfriend were murdered by the cult and the house had been ransacked because they were looking for the snuff film. Now, in a 1997 interview with Mallory Terry, David had also mentioned something similar. He talked about the presence of another van at the time that the shooting took place. When Mallory asked him whether Ron was the one who was recording it, he said that Ron did want to do some filming that evening. Beyond that, David was vague and did not divulge any new information. At the time, there was no concrete proof that backed up these theories and claims. And now, mind you, serial killers have a tendency to, like, try and take credit for more crimes than they committed.
Well, and prisoners can lie.
Oh, absolutely. And so I'm like, the fact that there's
especially when there's a minimal Netflix documentary going on.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many, like, weird things about this case. And I'm like, the fact that there's so little information out there, the fact that for some reason that we have, well, and also it's like,
what I will say in support of this theory is that it doesn't sound like the police ever came out and said they weren't looking into it, that it wasn't, you know.
Yeah. No, I get you. But I just think it's weird, like, how this is written at one point, because it's like, David Berkowitz,
Son of Sam.
I just hate calling them by
the ones that they chose, names. Yeah.
And now, because he specifically talks about the presence of another van at the time that the shooting took place. Now, why would he do that?
We haven't talked about naming serial killers.
We have. I know we had mentioned that we don't want to use their media names as much as possible.
I don't know.
Because I don't like giving them that attention.
I don't like naming them at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's kind of like, sometimes I feel like it's irrelevant and I hate it, but yeah, here we are. Now, what I find interesting is because it says that when Mallory Terry asked him whether Ron was the one who was recording it, he said that Ron did want to do some filming that evening. How the hell would David Berkowitz know that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, they didn't, as far as I know, I don't
know each other.
Right? I'm like, I can't fucking find anything. It's so confusing. Now, okay. So little corroboration, so little information. What do you think? Do you think it was just another drug-related crime? Perhaps someone to get some drugs from the dealer and then something went wrong? Or was Ron killed in relation to the Son of Sam's killings because Ron saw and had proof of too much? Was Elizabeth just in the wrong place at the wrong time?
I think it's likely either of them could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is that this does not seem... You don't usually see, like... Oh, okay, I might be talking a little bit out of my ass here. Shooting doesn't seem as personal as it could have been. Does that make sense?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. It's not... It shows...
It opens up
more a layer of removal.
Yeah.
From the crime.
Because, like... you're not beating them to death, basically.
Yeah. And or strangulation, or any of the other intimate levels of murder that involve
But I really think that does less to narrow down the possibilities and more to widen the possibilities.
Because I mean, so I don't remember when David Berkowitz was actually, like, convicted.
That doesn't seem like his MO, though.
Right, but obviously he wasn't the one who did it because he was in prison at the time.
Oh.
But
if he was already fucking in prison, was he already convicted?
That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, because if he hadn't been convicted, then
it's
maybe
slightly more likely.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to say I don't really believe that one anyway.
So he was arrested on August 10th of 1977. So, and then Elizabeth died, Stacy Moskowitz died on July 31st. So he was arrested 10 days after. Wow, he was so young, Jesus.
when 'twas convicted.
Now, I will say, because it's a little weird, because Elizabeth did meet his victimology. But that doesn't, I mean, he was literally in fucking...
It seems really unlikely to me. Especially if he was... I know investigations and trials can last years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
But he was arrested, like, mid-1977.
Mm-hmm.
Killed them in, like, late mid-1981.
Well, they're not saying that he killed them.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, I feel like he would have been convicted by then. Yeah. So what would be the point of killing them if they had evidence if he was already convicted?
Right. Okay. But especially on May 8th, 1978, he withdrew an insanity defense and pleaded guilty to the 6 murders.
1988?
1978. Then he was given 625 years to life sentences for the crimes.
And I don't know if he was the kind of...
He applied for parole? What a fucking idiot!
They think they're hot shit.
Huh.
I don't think I believe that theory.
I don't think I do. It's just like, it's just so... It's so far out of left field that I do not feel like it's even within the realm of possibility. It's just so bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, like, as sad as it is, and unfortunate, because so, like, if you read a little bit, I will say that there was a little bit of an article about Elizabeth specifically that was in the same article of them, the same November 2nd article, is that she was a very bright young woman who was a sophomore at the college that she was attending. But it was just like, she came from a very well-to-do family. And then to die as a result of potentially, like, a drug-related crime
that she didn't have any involvement in.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
It's very sad. But I honestly think it's closer to the truth.
Yeah.
But there's just... And for the listeners out there, there are a lot of things out there that... there are other things that are out there about this case. Not a lot of things, but other things that are out there. Like, one of them, like I mentioned earlier, was a Medium article. Honestly, my interpretation of that was someone who was basically writing a story of their interpretation of what could have happened. Not anything remotely to do with the facts. Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, we sometimes spin a web. But these were 2 people's lives that ended. Not pleasantly.
Was it like pitching itself as an article? Because that's different. When we say this could have happened, we start with what if?
Yeah. So this is... Here, I'll show you.
Or the theory goes.
So she's a true crime writer. And she researches murder. So... And this is written October 4th in 2018.
Okay, so this is already...
Within the first 2 sentences, they're going fully into...
I mean, already in the first sentence, making conclusive statements about stuff that hasn't been publicly confirmed yet.
Mm-hmm. Like, for example, it says specifically...
his girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, now, mind you, again, that Daily News article does refer to them as a couple, and they were introduced by family. But even still, over to his place for a photo shoot.
And they were enjoying wine.
And a group of masked individuals showed up at the door. Honestly, my interpretation of this, based on the, like, site title, is it's like my interpretation, because don't get me wrong, I think mediums and psychics have the potential to be true. I think that someone making a mockery, and I'm not saying that this isn't necessarily what this is, but someone making a mockery out of that to say, to get themselves reads on this, because they're like, oh, well, like, this is what I sense happened, and this is what I feel that they were doing at the time when they were murdered.
That families have had hope because of something that a medium has said and then had it torn away when the truth comes out, like, and especially in this, that seems like it wasn't requested. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He looks like a cartoon character. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Anyway, so that article, I was just like really irritated by it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same exact thing was for that forensic anthropology thing, because it was on this. Now, what I found interesting, and I only noticed like last night, was that
it looks like it's a
young, like very young person.
Yeah, because period 9, that doesn't even mean college. That means like high school.
Yes. That, and they got her age wrong. They were having a photo shoot in the house. Common. And so this is where I found that first article with the medium, or the second, because I linked that to that, and I tried to find this one, and there was nothing, because it didn't exist anymore. And I was just like, this is bullshit. But anyway, so unfortunately today there are no recent updates to this case, and to this day the murders of Ron Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman remain a mystery. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, recorded and produced by Belle and Ollie.
Please check out all of our social media where we have additional information shared. You can find all of those links on our website at AWMPA.com.
We'd love to hear your feedback for our podcast, so be sure to rate and review.
Tune in next week for another episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears.